You know those ads, the ones for our absolute dream homes? They pop up everywhere. But, behind those gorgeous photos and tempting prices, there's a whole world of hidden rules. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on real estate advertising and figure out what's actually legal, what's not, and how you can spot the difference.
So you're scrolling online, and then bam, you see it. The perfect house, an incredible price, pictures that are just stunning. And you think, wow, this seems almost too good to be true. And that's when you have to ask yourself, is it? Let's dig in and find out what makes an ad cross that line from just being persuasive to being flat out illegal. Okay, first things first. Let's talk about the golden rule of any kind of advertising law. You have to tell the truth. But, as we're about to see, that simple idea gets really complicated really fast, because the line between a fact, a kind of misleading half-truth, and an outright lie, it's way thinner than you might think. So what's the most critical rule of all? Clarity. It's all about clarity. The Department of Real Estate is super clear on this. If your ad can be interpreted in more than one way, well, the agent is on the hook for all of those interpretations. Any kind of ambiguity is a massive red flag. And this is where things get really, really serious. This quote, it's basically a direct warning to every single person with a real estate license. It's not enough to be technically right if you're deliberately leaving out information that completely changes the meaning. A half-truth isn't some clever marketing gimmick. In the eyes of the law, it's the same as a lie. Now check this out. This is a perfect real-world example of that principle in action. So a firm advertised that they'd sold $500,000 in property. But the reality? They sold one house for $250,000. So how did they get to that $500,000 number? Simple. They counted both the listing side and the selling side of the exact same deal. They basically double counted. The Department of Real Estate said that's misleading, because that's only how it works if two different companies are involved. That, my friends, is a classic half-truth. All of this stuff falls under a big legal concept called material misrepresentation. Basically, it's any false statement or even a key fact that you leave out that could end up harming a consumer. It covers everything from puffing up your sales numbers to hiding stuff in the fine print. At the end of the day, the issue is deception, whether you meant to do it or not. All right, let's switch gears and talk about money. Because the second an ad starts mentioning things like loans, fees, or financing, the rules get even more strict. This is where that fine print becomes absolutely critical. So take something called an advance fee. That's just money a broker gets from a client up front for doing some work. You can't just ask for it. There's a really strict four-step process. The agreement has to be pre-approved by the Department of Real Estate. It has to spell out exactly what the services are and how much they cost. It has to have a deadline. And this one is so important, it can never, ever, ever guarantee a result. No promising you'll get a loan or sell a property. And when it comes to loan ads in general, there are some very specific tripwires. You mention an interest rate, you have to also state the annual percentage rate, or APR. You can't offer free gifts to get someone to take out a loan. The broker's license number, it's got to be right there in the ad, plain as day. Oh, and for mobile homes, you can't advertise no down payment if you're really just pushing the buyer into a totally separate loan to cover it. These are total non-negotiables. Okay, so if you thought that last section was tricky, buckle up. Welcome to the final boss of real estate advertising. We're talking about subdivisions, new developments with a bunch of lots. The rules here are just incredibly detailed and so complex. And hey, just to give you a sense of the scale we're talking about here, look at this number. The real estate commissioner has laid out more than 37 specific advertising rules just for subdivisions. We're not going to go through all of them, don't worry, but let's definitely hit the big ones. A lot of these rules are just about managing expectations. You can't show off a fancy community pool or clubhouse in an ad unless it's either already built or its completion is financially guaranteed with a firm end date. You can't call a lot developed unless it actually has the basics, like paved roads and power. And if those roads aren't going to be maintained by the city, you absolutely have to disclose that. It's all about promises versus reality. And this extends to pictures and maps too. Any drawing of what the place will look like has to be clearly labeled artist's conception. If that drawing shows a beautiful park that hasn't been built yet, you have to point that out. And if you use a map to show how close you are to the city, it either has to be perfectly to scale or it has to show the actual driving miles. No more faking the commute with a misleadingly short line on a map.
And of course, there are rules to stop all the pricing games. You can't advertise some super low minimum price just to lure people in if less than 10% of your properties are actually for sale at that price. And you can't claim something is on discount if you haven't really been selling it at the higher price for a good while. It has to be a real discount, not just a made-up one.
So, with all these rules, what happens when somebody breaks them? This isn't just about getting a little warning letter in the mail. The consequences for doing this stuff are incredibly serious.
Let's be perfectly clear on this one. For a real estate agent, breaking these laws isn't just a little mistake. It can literally be the end of their entire career.
The punishments range from severe to, well, the absolute worst-case scenario. We're talking about getting your professional license taken away for good, facing massive financial fines. And yeah, in cases that are considered criminal misdemeanors, even jail time. The stakes could not possibly be higher.
So there you have it. From those sneaky little half-truths to the giant minefield of subdivision rules, you now have the tools to see past the marketing hype. You're not just a potential buyer anymore, you're an informed consumer. The real question is, now that you know the rules of the game, what are you going to look for in the next property ad you see?